Thank you. Victoria, you can sound check and try to share screen. Can we hear your volume, Victoria? Can you talk? Sound check 1, 2. I can't see your face. I'm not sure if your voice is moving. Can you put your camera more down so we can see your face? Okay. Yes. Excellent. Can you speak? Sound check 1, 2. Can you say sound check 1, 2, 3? I need you to speak, Victoria. Sound check? No. Okay. We still don't hear you. Can you try it without the headphones? Try without the headphones. Can you hear us? Please nod your head if you can hear us. If you can hear me. Okay. Can you speak into the mic? Okay, it's not working, Victoria, so let's try with the phone. Okay. Malaysia, you can start the music again. Thank you. Okay. Victoria, can you share your screen? Can you try talking now, Victoria? Okay. Can you share your screen? Okay. You can hear me now, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you share your screen?
Sorry.
Can you share your screen? Can you share your presentation?
Okay.
Yes. So it's working perfectly now. There's no echo. So we can do this. Okay. Yeah, it's working fine now. Thank you. Okay, we'll start at 11:05, Victoria. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome everybody to the second day of our alumni features, and I am now handing over to Ms. Tiffany Banda to take over the chairing of today's session. Thank you, Tiffany. Hi, Sindisiwe. I see Tiffany is no longer online. Are you going to chair in her place?
Revan, I think if you want to maybe just do in case Cindy can't come in. Oh, Cindy is coming in now.
Okay.
I think we'll just have co-chairs and just manage the chairing. If one's off, the other jumps on.
Okay. Thanks, Prof.
Yes.
So we don't waste time here.
Okay, so today we will start with Dr. Victoria Ferdinand, and as yesterday we were not able to get her presentation, today we are trying a new technique, so please do bear with us. Dr. Ferdinand will start sharing, and we will continue from there. Dr. Victoria, please could you share your screen? Okay, and now you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, guys. You can hear me today?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, much better. Go ahead, much better.
Okay. My name is Victoria. I'm a facilitator for ESD, and meanwhile, I'm a freelance, so I'm not based on any institution. And I've been coordinating the RCE Greater Dar es Salaam for the last 10, 15 years. So I have a little bit of experience on ESD practices. I wish to start with, for most educators, the contextual challenges, the fear or the question that we start asking if we want to engage ESD in our institutions. It's always, we can say generally, it is hard. We have got a very tightly fitted schedule. We have to teach, we have to assess, we have to test, we have to assign people, our own research and everything. So we are squeezed out of time. But also there is more. ESD is not a prescribed part of our institutional policy. So if it's not prescribed, mostly we don't know where to begin and how to go about doing it. Okay, the larger classes, even the students cannot include, so it is even difficult to draw their attention to some other programs which are not prescribed in our curriculum. But also even the learners, all these are the excuses, that the reasons, the basic challenges that the educators face. The learners are not interested in sustainability, they're interested in their core subjects, so they are not enthusiastic in doing extra work, like vocational work, practical skills. So let's start there. But then I also find that the learners are even not interested in pedagogy. When I'm teaching in educational colleges, most of the learners are not interested. They're like, oh, I just got this course, I didn't apply for this, I tried medicine, I failed, I tried this, I failed, then I got this education. So they are not interested. Above all, there's no jobs. They say there's no job, when there's job, there's no good payment, so it is a big challenge. But also, even the educators themselves, we as educators, we don't know how to integrate the ESD programs in our career development, because ESD is not a subject, it's just a process So we don't know how to reorient the process to fit our career development. So it's a challenge to our own practices. So there is endless reasons why educators fail to try to introduce ESD, the ESD agenda in their relevant organization where they work. And as we've been getting a lot of presentations, we can see that if we want to zero down, what we need to do is to seek change through teaching and learning as teachers. And then we've heard there is active learning cycle, the framework which Professor Hera presented. We also have learned through the presentations that have been presented that the challenge is why we need to change and how this change is going to happen. How are we going to enforce this change? But then how are we going to address the powerlessness? This Dr. Orange spoke about this. But then that's how to fit our ideas, our ESD ideas into relevant priorities of our countries, or our institutions, the policies, the strategies, the agenda, the environmental priorities of our countries or of our institutions. So always we have to see how we can be able to fit in there. But then there's current sustainability issues. When Dr. Orange was presenting current sustainability issues, they're very much important because when they come, we tend to forget all the other framework that existed. It is political and we all tend to sing about the current issues. Maybe we can sometimes try to anchor on the current sustainability issues and then we can be approved by our institutions. And the whole challenge comes when even the ESD itself doesn't have a prescription that you must follow. It is vague. It is up to your own mind, up to your own interest. It depends on how best you could pitch your agenda into your organization or into the students, the learners, the teachers. Depends on who you want to start with. And so there's nothing like one size fitting all. There's nothing like that. So you have to be flexible, reflective. You have to know how to cross boundary. But then you have a mission and a vision. You have a good vision, what you want to do and what you want to accomplish and how. Because if you don't have a vision, then you can't get anywhere. You can't be able to sell your proposal to the institutions, the authorities, the management, the VCs, or to the ministers, the municipalities. If you have a good vision, then you can sell it well. So it all depends on you. But collaboration is very important. Collaboration is SDG number 17. Always it has helped me. Whenever I want to do something, you would think maybe it is difficult to try it. But when you start to speak to other people, to speak to special groups that actually specialize on that item, we find that most people are interested to join with you, to support you, to partner with you, to collaborate. So collaborating has been very powerful on the side. And so I want to share a bit of my experience, how I tried to go about, how I tried to sell my agenda, and how much I succeeded. And maybe you have your own experience, and maybe you could try to see some of my experience and could be adapted to you. Maybe the first thing, when I saw the class was very bad, students were not interested. They were not interested even in the academic part. I was an ecology teacher, and then when I came to ecology 1 and 2, I decided to change my approach in teaching. So I became more user-friendly. I started to speak their language. Then I started to persuade them, but I was fine. I was feeling as if I was sure where I wanted to take them to. So most of them started to hear me. Most of them started to focus, started to build interest to see why am I speaking about these EST things. Then I had to find something which is more engaging, more interesting, more interactive, more actionable, fun, and more rewarding. Not rewarding in terms of material, but in terms of satisfaction and so forth. So I started to look at things that could interest them, like to facilitate visits, to attend some public lectures. So I had to take them there. It is difficult sometimes. They don't have money, and I don't have money to pay for every student. But then I had to pull up. And then at the end of the day, they started to come and agree. And then we proposed other activities, practical activities, actionable activities like waste management. And then we started going outdoors, like doing monthly bird watching, celebrating important days like World Environment Day, Wetlands Day, and stuff. Partnership was very key. I had to collaborate with the universities that I knew were doing some of the activities, to collaborate with the municipalities, like the issue of waste management. And then I tried to propose a communication strategy where we could be documenting what we are doing. Then we started a newsletter, a quarterly environmental newsletter at the campus. And it was a quarterly, so it worked like for 2 times before I left the university. But the memories are still with me. Yeah, so there's this nature walks where we do excursions, and there's the sorting of waste, there's the newsletter, like 3 projects. This is a sample of a newsletter. This is a newsletter, I think it is 2nd issue of the newsletter. That it was circulated at the campus, all at the campus, and strictly, because most of the management would think you are doing political things. You are trying to sell yourself for political posts. So it is very sensitive when you are doing ESG issues. Everyone translates this in his own way. So at least I managed to do the 2 issues, and the management allowed us to do it. And the students were involved in the collection of articles, editing of articles, and the circulation of the newsletter. It's electronics, but it was only 2 pages. We didn't have to print it, but even if someone wanted to print it, it was easy because it's only 2 pages. And then we have to go to field, and most students were demanding transport. They said, oh, we can't go there, it is very far, we don't have money. But then I said, oh, we have to go, we must go. Even if we don't have money, we have to start it. So I got a few, but at least I got a few to start with. The next time, there are more than a few. So sometimes we have to start things small. And then after some time, when they come back, they start to talk to their colleagues. And then we find the next time, a lot of students are trying to register for the outdoor activities. I put it clear that this is not part of the course, because it is not prescribed in the ecology course that will give marks for you going to field. No, but there's no penalty if you don't go. This is optional, but I strongly advise them to be interested in this so that they could build some interest on nature. Their life was very dull. They are so weak. They are not happy. Although they're like certain, I don't know, they're like something that I had never seen. So I just wanted to cheer them up, to build their confidence and to empower them, because they're biology students and they don't have field. They've never been out. They're just on the campus. There's too many exams. So sometimes it's just the level of your creativity and the determination and the vision that you have, that where you to do what you want to do. No one has a real prescription. So this project really based on the empowerment of learners. Although it had some learning, because when they go out, they meet some stuff, they learn about nature. They are not only bird watching, they are learning why birds, why this species, what is the vegetation, why this, why the ponds, why water. So this is part of the students, but then this is also all students, but here, these are some of the staff. Because at the end of the day, as we continue to go monthly, some staff decided to join the paid watching. Because previously they said, oh, we are taking students, it's for students. And then I said, no, it's not for students, it's for everyone. And all these are biology staff. So they are brought up from botany department and zoology department. So they decided to join us. So it became more interesting. It became a thing that every month people are asking, when are we going for bird watching? And then I think this had the impact. This had a learning impact because most learners were very excited and they started to demand some more. They wanted to go more far from Dar es Salaam. They wanted to be to more, but here in Dar es Salaam, I just used to take them once a month. They wanted to be to more, even like twice a month or like every week, but it wasn't possible. And there was emotional interaction between the students when they're in the field. It's different from when they are in classes, when they are sad in classes. There was even interaction between the learners and myself, the learners and the educator, which I liked very much. And you can see them smiling, you can see them running, you can see them selfing, asking for selfie with educators. Even the shyest of all, like the girls that I never heard them speaking in class. They came to me and asking when are we going to have some more excursions? Where are you not going as far as Bagamoyo and as far as Kisarawe? We can go even somewhere far from here. So you can see how they were pleased and they are empowered by the excursion. This is after second and
Prevan, Victoria, we need to just watch time. We've got 4 other presentations coming still. So Victoria, maybe if you could try to wrap up quite soon.
yeah. So even the students started to ask why they fail in exams. We got to feedback, they ask why they fail in examinations. So you can see they start to connect to the field work and the examination. So I found this was very useful. And I request if you are possible in your region where there is this kind of discussions happening, most NGOs are organizing this. You can ask them, most universities are organizing this. It's internal thing, but if you ask them, they can invite you as students, as teachers. They can go there. And when they become teachers in schools, it is possible for them to involve kids and students. That's one of my projects that I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for listening. And I'm sorry for the voice.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was such a lovely presentation. We will take questions and answer at the end of all presentations. I'm now handing over to Tiffany to continue chairing the session. Over to you, Tiffany.
Thank you. Good morning all and welcome to this morning session. And thank you, Victoria, for the wonderful presentation. There's a lot that I think as participants we can learn from how to go about our own projects. And so we won't take much time, as Prevan has just said, that the question and answer and comments will come at the end. We have about an hour remaining and we have 4 presenters. So what I was thinking was if we would time ourselves, so each presenter will have about 10 minutes of presentation. So we should have enough time for addressing the questions and answers. And so our first presenter is Precious. So you're there, please take the floor. You have 10 minutes, or if you have about a minute remaining, I'll just cut in to remind you that there's a minute to go. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's very good to meet you all online. I'm very happy to be here. I work within technical and my experiences that I'm going to be sharing today is how I've started to take some of my research work that I was involved in together with colleagues at the ELRC forward into working with understanding learning responses within technical and vocational education. So for the last 10 years, I think, I've been investigating and researching how we look at skills and how we look at green skills and what that means and how we look at it in relation to education and training systems. So I've been doing a lot of work kind of looking at system elements, looking at how to work with system elements and how to do advocacy into education and training systems. The part that I've chosen to share today is just some work that we are doing around TVET. And I just want to raise two problems. I mean, why is TVET an important educational sector for us all to focus on? It is essentially the educational sector that traverses the education work border. So it has a direct link between education, work, intermediate skills, which are often the skill level at which young people enter employment or young people enter livelihood practices. So it's an important educational sector for us as ESD practitioners to actually think about and actually engage with. But importantly, it is also the sector that has for a long time been implicated in replicating productivism. The mindset of TVET has actually been formed from around issues of industrialization and production. So TVET now, and a lot of critique that's being leveled at TVET is that it continues and maintains the dominant logic of industrial societies. So us as ESD educators that are starting to work in this space, we're actually working against a dominant mindset that exists within this educational sector. And that's important to bear in mind. So the second important reason of why this is an important sector for us to engage with as ESD practitioners is that if I look at the research that we've done in South Africa, and we've expanded this research now, we're doing it in Uganda, and we're starting some work in Kenya and Malawi. The reality is that the response at this level has been ad hoc, fragmented, reactive, and inefficient. It has been very difficult to see a coherent response. And I'm going to show you what we are finding. It's also very important at this level within education systems that this is the level that actually helps people to gain access into the labor market. This is the level that helps people to gain access into a learning pathway. So it's an important educational sector for us all to think about and engage in. So the core argument here is that there is an urgent need to give more attention to sustainability within vocational education. Firstly, to move away from the underpinning modes of productivist thinking that are implicit within vocational education. And what we'll see from the data that I'm going to show you is that the current approaches within vocational education are actually quite limited and adaptive. So the work that we are trying to actually do is to look at how can we gather from all our thinking tools, research tools as ESD practitioners to work with the systems and processes within VET to develop a more responsive VET that is more responsive to its local context, to its people, and to the creation of livelihood responses at entry level. So we know that there's been a lot of impetus to support a green economy, and there are multiple reasons for that. And what this has shown, and is that there have been some responses in African regions, and we're busy with a study with UNESCO at the moment around it with the BUILT program, to actually look at the responses in sub-Saharan Africa. There have been rapid responses, but a large part of them have been extremely naive. So, and I'll show you what we mean by that now. Okay, so I'm not going to go back into how we're looking at it. So what we're able to see is the kind of educational responses, and this is where our criticality and our reflexivity as ESD practitioners need to come in. It's not just about how we respond, it's thinking through and reflecting on how we're designing responses, how we're thinking about the responses, how we're actually drawing on theory and our environmental theory and what we know. You know, what's the difference then between green capitalism and actually trying to make an environmental contribution? Are we perpetuating the capitalist paradigm and the productivist paradigm when we're thinking about greening within vocational education and training? So from the research work that we're doing, there are 4 kinds of responses that we're seeing. There's a strong institutional greening response that includes elements like campus curriculum greening, campus greening, working with the community, okay? From the countries that we used in the study, or that we are using in the work that we're doing at the moment, none of them actually do all. So you get a fragmented response of trying to make a one subject curriculum green within a college, okay, or within a college program. Then the integration, the second type of response we're actually seeing is the kind of integration of training packages. So you insert a renewable energy, or I'm losing my head now. So like some kind of renewable energy program into a college. So you look at the training of program, you look at the training of lecturers, you're running of the program, you train groups of learners. So it's basically, and there's been a lot of this across Africa, a lot of it being funded through development funding. So this insertion of an academic program into college programs. And then the next kind of educational responses that we're seeing is the short course kind of program that are targeted around particular employable skills, how to install, repair, and maintain solar geyser. And it's been extremely popular in South Africa, IRM programs. So programs are developed and they run within colleges and out. But it's been quite interesting interviewing some of the students on those programs. They actually don't even understand why it's important to have a solar geyser, what difference it actually makes. So the environmental value within it is actually is not even, it's not thought of, you know, with the kind of broader environmental mindset. And then the fourth kind of response is this thinking and working with genetic skills. So we insert water conservation or general sustainability into programs. And we've seen that in hospitality programs and some other programs in the region. So there's these kind of, the types of responses that we're actually seeing. So going back to our theory, because we're good researchers, we try to actually understand what's happening. And we drew on some work from Sterling in this particular work with the colleagues that I'm working with. But what you can see is that most of the learning responses that we are seeing emerging within TVET are what we call bolt-on responses. So they're responses that actually bolt on greening learning responses within the existing system, while the system itself actually remains unchanged, largely unchanged, okay? And this is reflective of a first order change. It's an adaptive change, but there's very little change to the actual system, okay? So you get the sense of, well, the education and training system is operating the way it is. We've inserted a bolt on something within it. And that was by far the kind of dominant responses. So we have been working with groups of colleagues, and Rhodes included, trying to look at what will a more responsive, a more sustainability focused, place-based, localized response to TVET actually look like? And that is how we're taking, or I've been working at taking all of the different bits, and I've been involved in different types of ESD work over the last, I don't know how many years, and trying to pull it into working within an educational sector and system. I'm going to stop there, guys. I hope I've shared a little bit of what I'm doing and how I've tried to pull some of it into working within one educational sector within formal education. I'm happy to share experiences or take any questions.
Thank you very much, Pressure, for the wonderful presentation. It's so informative, and I think of colleagues from the TVET colleges have benefited from it. And as we said, if you have any questions, please can you post them in the question and answer panel. And then we are going to quickly move on to our next presenter, who is Zinhle. And sorry, I was supposed to provide like a introduction, but I think if you are doing, then you move on into the presentation and you have the 10 minutes of presenting. Thank you very much.
We're not getting any sound. Zinhle, we're not receiving any sound from you. Sorry.
Zinhle, you muted.
Okay, it seems that we have lost Zinhle's connection.
Zinhle, I think you are.
I think she has dropped out. So,
Okay.
Chair, if you could move to the next presenter.
All right. So while we're waiting for Zinhle to sort herself out, could we have a third presenter, who is Iris? And
Good morning,
Iris,
everybody.
I would like you to just take the first 2 minutes to introduce yourself, or then 10 count. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Preven, do you have my presentation so that you share it from your screen?
I'll need to load it up, Iris. Could you give me a few minutes? 2 seconds.
Okay.
While you're waiting, you could introduce yourself and what you're doing, so that by the time Preven is ready, then you will get into the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm Iris Chimbodza from Harare, Zimbabwe. I'm a teacher educator at Belvedere Technical Teachers College. And as you can hear from the name of the institution, Belvedere Technical Teachers College offers courses for both academic and TVET teachers. And so my experience that I'm going to share with you covers, okay? My experience actually covers what we offer for both academic pre-service teachers as well as TVET pre-service teachers. I've been in the, next slide, I've been in the teacher education profession since 1991. So I can say I'm one of the oldest teacher educators probably in this particular program. And over the years, I have experienced a shift in environmental education or education for sustainable development, from what I can say, has been a call to action for ESD. My first encounter really with environmental education was when I enrolled in Rhodes University Spaces College Training Services course, and I have also had experiences in the ESA conferences, and I can say education for sustainable development from my experience is that ESD is really a complex process and that needs diverse and innovative responses. And I've experienced ESD having shifted from a call to action, for example, that enunciated in the Bonn Declaration, to ESD as taking action, as is highlighted in the Berlin Conference. But if it is action taking, the question would be, where or how do I participate? What are the participation platforms? Well, my experience is that one can actually volunteer to present papers or to contribute papers to global or world conferences, regional conferences such as the ESA, but most of all, contribution as an individual, participation as an individual is at the local level where most visible activities can be seen. I'll just give an example of my experience as an agent of change, because ESD needs agency, both the individual agency and collective agency. If there's no agent, there's no action, and so there will be no ESD implementation. And an example is the secondary teacher training environmental education project that we had in Zimbabwe, and it was a funded project that started in 2003, ended in 2008. So by 2008, a lot of us had acquired ESD knowledge and skills. But now, after the project comes to an end, a project that has been financially funded and a project that had technical assistance, the question was now how to sustainably continue with the project or the activities that had been started without donor funding and technical support. Another challenge after the project was who was now to spearhead the continuation of the program aims and objectives, and what structures were to be used in order to ensure sustainability. This is when I realized with my colleagues that adapting to changed circumstances became very essential. And so after the STEEP project, next slide, after the STEEP project, we find that we actually decided to focus on the subject in which I was actually a teacher educator. And so for the geography and environmental science subject, we decided I committed actually myself to influencing other section members to continue improving on the integration of EESD into the syllabus, and in order to have something visible in that syllabus, and this is way back in 2004, that was through a school-based environmental and sustainability education project, which we made compulsory and which we requested that it become a coursework requirement. On the visible activities in the institution, I also requested for a permanent piece of land from college administration so that that piece of land would be designated as a teaching and learning site, primarily for geography and environmental science students so that they would practice whilst in college before going out on teaching practice. They would practice hands-on and heads-on. And we started with a herbal gardening and soil management, even though it has now changed its roles also to include even nutrition gardening for practice purposes. You will see that because we only have 2 terms at a time in the institution, during the rainfall season when our students are not there, our herbal gardening site actually become used by other teachers, as you can see in the following photograph, where during the lockdown in 2020, our portion of land was actually used by resident members of staff to grow their maize. But when we reopened in May of 2021, next slide, please. When we reopened, we had to involve our students, first year intake of students whom we actually had to take into our piece of land to start clearing the land and to actually practice growing sket bomb there as a green fence, so that they actually practice how they can also start an activity once they are in their schools on teaching practice. Next slide, please. I also had to lobby for a 2-hour ESD slot in the college's orientation program, so that every year when we have new intake of students, both tech voc and academic, we actually orient them to ESD, what we expect, the activities and so forth, so that every student in the institution becomes aware, and also to register ESD as a club as a co-curricular activity, so that those who may not be in the geography and environmental studies, environmental science subject can also be involved at club level in the institution.
I have a minute to go.
Okay. We also had a communities of practice activity where we involved our surrounding schools, so that we actually scale to some extent what we were doing in our institution to nearby secondary schools. Next. So you can see from what I have said already, you find that agency is very important. These are just some of the ESD community of practice members from the schools that collected herbs to go and start their own herbal gardens. Next slide, please. But as you can see, from what I have experienced of ESD, collaboration, agency, and having that desire to continuously learn is very, very important in ESD, because every time you have changed the circumstances, that requires our adaptation. Next slide, please. Next. Yes, ESD is cross-cutting, and we find that especially with the SST program, we do have, this is just one example of how one of the participants actually has their change project in the TVET college, where they are enhancing sustainable development in TVET through the use of ICT's informative assessment. Next. Yes, so ESD is an ongoing transformative process. There's need for change in mindsets. We can have short-term observable results, such as in our change projects. We can usually also have long-term results after we have scaled, and ESD, what I've noticed, can only be enhanced really in communities of practice at different scales, whether at institutional level, regional level, or global level. Next. having said that, I have experienced that ESD can actually be summed up as what Nyerere said about adult education, that the future of an adult is now and not a preparation for the future. So practical and sustainable ESD actions now actually can ensure quality of life for future generations. That has been my experience, just condensed into in short. Thank you very much, Tatenda. Siyabonga, Zikomo, asante sana.
Thank you so much, Iris, and thank you for the wonderful quote at the end. I think it's still something that challenges us, and the examples that are given are things that are there to encourage us and to make us feel it's something that is possible for those of us that are just venturing into ESD. Without taking much of our time, I just wanted to find out if Zinke is ready. Zinke, are you ready? Zinke, are you ready?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm ready.
Yes, we can hear you. You can proceed. You have 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and then 10 minutes. I will remind you when you have 2 minutes left. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Zindla Songwahu, a lecturer at Rhodes University in South Africa. I think that's enough for now. My presentation this morning looking at ESD informal education, particularly in teacher education, will start first with the background in terms of what motivates the work that I do in integrating ESD and teacher education. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes that I like that speaks to the work that I do. It's saying that what is the purpose of education? Since long before independence of the people of this country, that was Tanzania at the time, more education, more education for their children, but have never really stopped to consider why we want education, what its purpose is. We never question the current education system because we have never thought about education except in terms of obtaining teachers, engineers, and administrators, etc. Individually and collectively, we have in practice thought of education as training for the skills required to earn high salaries in the modern sector of our economy. It is now time that we looked again at the justification for a poor society like ours, spending almost 20% of its government revenues on providing education for its children and young people, and began to consider what that education should be doing. For in our circumstances, it is impossible to devote that amount of shillings every year on education for some of our children, while others go without, unless its result has a proportionate relevance to the society we are trying to create. Although this is a quote from the 1960s, but I do think that the essence of the quote and the questions that Nyerere was asking at the time are still pertinent in our current situation in our countries in SADC. Now, the question for me is, what kind of society are we trying to create? And therefore, what kind of education are we looking at? Now, looking at the South African context, I went to look at the budget in terms of how much are we really spending on education. You will see from the budget that almost 272.3 billion, which is 13.5% of the big chunk of the income, goes to basic education. And 5.9% of the chunk, which is 119.6 billion, goes to post-schooling education and training. So there is a lot of money that is spent on education in any given country. So the question we should be asking ourselves, what education do we need for the 21st century? What is the purpose of education in the current context of social transformation? How should we organize learning? What competencies do societies and economies need today and tomorrow? Now, looking at how education is defined in the common good, one of the important things that has been highlighted is that if we want to look at education as a public good or a common good, we should be looking at the aim to develop democratic political institutions that enable citizens to have greater voice in the decisions that affect their well-being. So is our education a common good that enables each and every citizen of every country to have a voice and agency in terms of the decisions that affect their well-being? I won't go through all the definitions that speaks to the common good, but what I would like to also highlight in the second last bullet is that when we talk about ESD, it is looked at as integral to quality education that we want to offer, because it empowers the learners to make informed decisions and responsive actions for a more just and sustainable future. Now, when we look at teacher education and the global imperatives, we are already aware of the 17 SDGs that we are working towards, as well as education 2030 framework that looks at what we want to achieve. Because one of the aims of the 2030 education is to develop skills, values, attitudes that enable citizens to lead healthy and fulfilled lives, to make informed decisions, and to respond to local and global challenges through ESD. Now, the question is, are teacher education institutions, how are we aiming to meet these educational goals? Because as teacher education institutions, we play a very critical role in shaping education and training systems in our countries. Now, looking at where and how can we provide support? Now, as teacher educators, we are lead agents in terms of supporting teachers, be it teachers in in-service programs or pre-service programs, so that they're in a position to provide quality education in basic education, which is the foundations of our education system. Now, UNESCO in the GAP program had looked at 4 dimensions where ESD can be supported. One of the key areas is looking at the learning content. What knowledge is included? It also looks at knowledge that is included in the curriculum, but also looking at how do we engage with this knowledge? How do we share this knowledge in terms of the pedagogy? But also looking at the learning environments. Where is this learning happening? While we also look at the outcomes, the knowledge, the skills to be acquired and developed. Now, ESD has pedagogies that want to develop. When we look at the competencies that we are wanting our children to be able to develop, these are some of the bullets that I've indicated there. Recognizing and understanding relationships, which means a systems thinking competency. Looking at, are they able to evaluate multiple futures? Are they able to have a futures thinking? Are they able to assess consequences of actions and be able to deal with current and future risks and changes? Are they able to reflect on norms and values that underpin the actions that we do? And also, are they able to work collectively to implement innovation for sustainability? But are they also able to apply problem-solving frameworks to address sustainability problems? Now, teachers are seen as critical key agents in transforming education in the classroom through integrating ESD. Hence, it was found important that in the GAP, one of the important priorities was to build the capacity of teachers and educators. And as teacher educators, we have therefore an important role in supporting teachers to be able to do what they need to do. Now, in my case, looking at integrating ESD in teacher education, you will find that there are different and diverse responses in how teacher educators respond to the integration of ESD in the work that they do. But some of the questions that I had asked myself in my plan to start integrating ESD was to look at what is the vision and mission of my institution? What are we wanting to achieve as an institution? What do we stand for? But more importantly, also, what is the vision and mission of my faculty, department, or it could be school of education? But also looking at there are qualifications in which I teach in, but what are the exit level outcomes that are expected of the qualifications, be it a PGCE or an honors level or a bachelor degree in education? And then focusing on what are the learning outcomes that I would like to see for my module that fits into the exit outcomes of the qualification that I'm involved in. And then also looking at, because as a teacher educator, my job is to support teachers to be able to do the work that they need to do. So I made it my job to actually look at what are the principles and general aims that underpin the basic education, because that is what those are the important principles and aims that the teachers that I work with need to be able to grapple with and understand and make operationalized in the work that they do. But also looking at what networks do I have in order for me to be able to integrate ESD in teacher education. and what community engagement activities am I involved in that would assist me. But the important thing that I would like to flag also in terms of integrating EST in teacher education is to ask yourself, what is in my sphere of influence? Because as much as we might have idealistic ideas in terms of integrating EST, we need to also consider, what am I able to do? What is in my sphere of influence? So one of the important questions I asked myself in terms of what is my sphere of influence of, what change can I and do I want to make in my practice for the common good? What tools can I give the teachers that I work with to enable them to surface and engage with EST in their subjects? And how am I modeling what I want them to do when they engage with EST? Now, I teach initial teachers in the PGCE program. You will find that these teachers are expected to teach different subjects in the schools when they graduate and get their certificate. And my job as a teacher educator is to support them to be able to work with EST in the subjects that they teach. This is how I'm integrating EST in my program as a teacher educator. So I provide them with tools to look at, when we talk about education for sustainable development, what does that look like in the subject that you teach? So with them, I engage with the sustainable development goals and give them an opportunity to actually see to what extent, if at all, their subjects are demonstrating evidence of engaging with any of the SDGs. Moreover, they also have to look at to what extent is my subject enabling me to work with learners so that they can acquire and develop the key competencies for sustainability. So in the work that I do,
you have 2 minutes.
Okay. So in the work that I do, I try to model the pedagogies that I would want my students also to model, to use and engage with when they engage with EST in the teaching of their subjects when they surface. And also in how I assess them, I'm also modeling, different assessment practices that they also need to engage with to ensure that they support the development of the key competencies that we want our learners to be able to surface. So the work that I do as a teacher educator is in supporting of what teachers are expected to do, but moreover, not only putting a ceiling only in terms of what is expected in the curricula that they teach, but the tools that they need for them to be able to decode the curriculum and have more knowledge that they can use for them to be able to engage with EST. So the integration of EST is at different levels for different people, depending on what is your sphere of influence and what are you able to do and are willing to do in your particular field. Thank you. Let me end there.
Thank you very much, Zinhle, for the enlightening presentation. I'm sure we all have benefited from it. I specifically have learned a lot in the questions that she raised initially before getting into the initiative that she had planned. I think that is something that we can all reflect on, finding out what's on the ground, finding out what networks we can establish while doing this, because it works well when you're working in a team, but also you don't want a situation where you're reinventing a wheel, or if there's something different that you want to introduce, it's important to find out what's already there and how you can bring in whatever it is that's new. So thank you so much for the awesome presentation, Zinhle. And I'll now call upon our last presenter, who is Taswika, and you have your 2 minutes of introducing.
Okay. Hello.
We can hear you, Taswika, and see you.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this chance to present
yourself, and then 10 minutes of as our presenters are making the questions that you have. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, my name is Tashika Kanasi from Serowe College of Education, as you have heard. And Serowe College of Education is a diploma offering institution, and we have 2 programs, that is Diploma in Primary Education and Diploma in Early Childhood Care and Education. So I have a chance to teach all of them, and I'm teaching them, I'm offering music education. I'll share my screen now. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm going to be tackling the topic on ESD, informal teacher education, and TVET context. And I'm going to be looking at the perspectives and how I view the program that or the course that I engaged in, and my experiences. And all what I'm going to do is to try and share what I did on my change project. I'm having a little problem with my slide. All right. I will start with a bit of a background. I'm somebody who studied or trained in diploma in secondary education with my specialization in home economics and music. And probably that's where my interest in crafts, and which I did through reusing the materials or the recycled materials began. So as I continued in life, I got interested in research, that is the action research, when I dealt with music and early childhood care and education research articles. And this in 2019 led to be nominated into the in-country ESD training. And that's where my interest and knowledge on ESD started. And I had the opportunity to attend the sustainability start with teachers at Rhodes University in September 2019. And thereafter, I engaged in a change project, which I will be sharing with you, which I believe it will help you in one way or the other. One of the things that also made me to be interested in this ESD was when I engaged in the dialogue meeting, policy meeting, where I realized that policies should include ESD so that it can be possible for teachers and student teachers to execute or to implement the ESD. Furthermore, the World ESD Conference helped me to understand and see what other people in the world are doing, teacher educators are doing with the ESD, the projects that they are doing, and how it benefits the education system. And then with the ESD itself, I realized that with this sustainable development goal number 4 of ensuring inclusive, equitable, quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all, we ought to integrate the ESD in the curriculum, where I learned that transformative or better ways of teaching will help learners for survival. That is when we have the change-oriented learning, which is necessary for the survival and for the future generation to also survive. So that's how I realized that these methods will also help in the environmental issues. And then I realized that the 21st century skills are needed. Learners ought to be creative. Learners ought to be problem solvers. Learners ought to be innovative, especially in this era of COVID-19. These are the things that are needed for somebody to be sustainable. And then I've already talked about the policy document. The other thing that I realized was, it is very important to include the indigenous knowledge system. That is to say, the knowledge in our culture is very important. Our cultural knowledge is very important in ESD. So people there out in the community have got knowledge which can help. So as you can look at the picture over there, the environmental issues are one of the things that are very important to look into, because we are living in a planet where there are a lot of change, a lot of things that deteriorates our planet. But then we only have one planet, that is planet Earth, which needs to be taken care of. Then when you look at that issues, that picture, it shows that there are a lot of things which can be used in order to come up with something that can help in this ESD. Then the most important thing is now to look into the change project that I did. And this is very important to engage with everybody in the institution in order to succeed. The first picture there shows when the school management, that is the principal and the two deputies, were sensitized with what a change project is and what ESD is. And the community of practice also below there were also sensitized on that, including the early childhood care and education student and other departments. So it's very important to collaborate, to have everybody on board so that the project can succeed. We have the change project activities, like I talked about with the indigenous knowledge. The top picture there, it's the environmental group from the village trying to address the students on how to take care of environment. That is what we said by having the indigenous knowledge incorporated in the curriculum. We also have far right over there, the elderly women playing the bones, indigenous knowledge on how to play the bones, where to get that, a cheap thing that one can pick, which is on the ground, which is polluting the environment. So we had learners below the elderly women teaching, being taught by the elderly women how to play those bones. That is the knowledge that educators did not have, but we got it from the community. And then we have some projects like a bunny there made from a teaching, made from the toilet paper rolls. And as we move, these are more projects that learners did from agriculture, planting, using those 2-liter plastic bottles, because it's for early childhood. It was made beautiful for them to use and to be interested in engaging in planting. We also have from art, the crafts. We also have from music. That's a musical instrument, right, far right, a tin and a log. We also have some rattles. We have this, all these projects were done using the recycled materials. And then we are saying, what have we achieved in this project? At least we are saying student teachers are aware of environmental issues such that they can make materials from recycled objects or materials in line with the syllabus. Look at the syllabus or the curriculum and come up with the projects by utilizing the materials that one may think they can go to the bins. And then we also have input. I have the input in the curriculum. At the moment, we are running curriculum review, early childhood curriculum review, of which, because I'm a focal person, ESD focal person, I was included in that. And we are including the issues integrating ESD in the early childhood curriculum review. And other departments, as we have seen, they are there embracing ESD. One thing that was done just in July, just before the college closed, was to develop an ESD committee to facilitate all the activities, because it was difficult to facilitate them from a few people or from myself as a focal person. Then, because the management was included at the beginning or at the commencement of the project, then they managed to see the importance of having the ESD committee, which comprises of a member from members from every department, so that we can facilitate that. And one thing is that we have secured a land in the college for the educational park. It was our dream project. And as you can see the picture there, we have a picture with a traditional hut. It's a bit like up the hill. That's where the college educational park, ESD park, is going to be. And I've put the SRC engagement. This is to say, the Student Representative Council, that is the president and the two other members, approached me when they heard about the project we were doing with early childhood. They approached me as the focal person to say they really want to be engaged and also to help all other students in the college to be part of the project. Hence, they came up with that suggested where we have our traditional hut there to be our educational park.
2 minutes, the speaker.
Thank you very much. Yes. Really, in conclusion, I would say there are ways in which one can succeed in ESD. First of all, the advice is that you should deal with the mindset of the one who, the focal person, and mindset of the people who will be engaged in the project. There is need for collaboration with the community, collaboration with the stakeholder, collaboration with everybody, because ESD needs people's minds to be together so that they can achieve as change agents. Determination, one should be determined. I haven't talked about any challenges, but you may meet some few challenges. But if you are determined to carry on with this ESD, everything as possible. Patience, one should be patient because, you know, at times it takes time to do other things and also to see the results. But then at the end of it all, regardless of whatever is on your way, if all these are there, then one can succeed in ESD. Otherwise, let me say, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, the speaker, for the wonderful presentation. I think we have all been enriched by all the 4 presentations, and the good thing about all the presentations is that they point towards certain focal points that I think the speaker has wonderfully summed them up at the end of our presentation. So far we've had presentations to do with learning approaches. We have presentations that have to do with TVET, with the teacher training colleges, and so I think everyone else has been catered for. And so we have a couple of minutes remaining, and we thought we would dedicate those to the questions that have been put forward. So far from my screen, I think I have 2 questions. The first question says, thank you, Pressure, for the presentation. Will you please unpack the concept of greening in the context of TVET for sustainable development? So that question is addressed to Pressure. While Pressure is trying to come up with the response there, I'll just read through what I have in the question and answer so that people are prepared to respond. So the second one is addressed to Iris. So it says, what presentation, Iris? Can you please share briefly how ICTs could be used for TVET assessment in enhancement for sustainable development. So that one is about TVET assessment for IRIS. And the other one is, it says, Taswika Kanasi, the presentation and your project is wonderful. I can see nature of your project in one point require little funds to implement the project. I would like to know if you received any financial support from your college or any institution. Do you think someone can carry any project of change without having financial seed? Generally, the presentation was wonderful with lots of things to take. So those are the questions that have been addressed. The same first one is for pressure, second one goes to Iris, and the third one goes to Taswika. So I'll give you at least a minute and a half each to just summarize your responses to those questions. We'll start with pressure. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the question. So there are different ways to look at the question, and I think what I tried to share was what is coming out from the different kinds of educational responses that we're seeing at present. So there are responses. Greening for some people is around greening the TVET campus. So they look at issues of energy management, waste management, water management, pollution management within their campus. And for some of them, and a lot of ESD activity has been to engage in an action project around greening the campus and then integrating that ESD greening practices within their curriculum and actually looking at which parts of their curriculum. So the other ways of greening curriculum have been to institute greening programs like and greening integrating things like renewable energy programs, installation, repair, and maintenance. Actually was looking at the long list of registered TVET programs in Southern Africa this morning. And then the other aspect of greening is to how, remember I also made the point that TVET colleges are important links between work and community. So how they relate to work and how they relate to their community is also a very important part of it. So the kind of work that we've been doing, and that's working back into supporting the system. And by that, I mean the education and training system is also looking at what kind of greening the pathway. So a person that does this qualification, where can this person transition to? How can they transition? That's another aspect that's critical to greening TVET. And that is about creating technical learning pathways so that people that enter these kind of entry-level technical qualifications can actually develop career paths, can actually make contributions and develop livelihoods linked to these kind of career paths. That's another aspect. So another area of work that we're engaged with is, and remember that I spoke about the kind of productivist framing of VET. VET has always been framed about around production and supporting industry and issues like that. It's actually looking at the value chain and actually looking at where in the value chain. So if we're teaching about manufacture of X, where in the value chain are the environmental hotspots? Well, who are the people that work in those environmental hotspots? What are the jobs that are actually there? What's the environmental knowledge and skills that's needed around those jobs? So we've been working in another process, actually doing some of that work and actually seeing, okay, so if this TVET program is focused around this value chain, which are the environmental hotspots areas along this area of work that's going to be relevant? And then what are the kind of environmental knowledge and skills? I hope I've given you some kind of spotlights on how people are approaching the idea of greening within TVET. So as you can see, it's important to look at this and to think about it both from the learning processes as well as the way work is framed and the nature of work is framed. Because I think that TVET cannot ignore the fact that the nature of work needs to change, and the nature of work is actually changing. Okay, and TVET cannot be complicit in reproducing the problems and the issues in current society. So I hope I've given you some insight. I'm happy to discuss further.
Thank you very much, Pressure, for the response. And I'm hoping presenters will be kind enough to share their contacts in case people still have to push these conversations further beyond this meeting. The second question was addressed to Iris. So Iris, if you take up the floor, you have 1.5 minutes. Just sum it up, and then as we're saying, if you would be happy to have your email address, if you'd share your email address in the chat section, so that if people would want to further their discussion beyond this this forum, then we can do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. TVET assessments have always been face-to-face, where lecturers or teacher educators actually visit the sites, visit the students, and then they assess whatever projects are being done on the ground. However, also due to the COVID pandemic, but even prior to that, because this particular project I cited started in 2019, where there was a training of both the students who were about to go on industrial attachment, as well as the lecturers who then visit or were supposed to visit these students, training them how to use ICT, how to use the computers and the particular programs on assessment. And so the reduction in the costs involved in visiting, as well as the paperwork which used to be involved in the assessments, there has been a great reduction, according to the TVET lecturer who actually engaged in that particular change project. And so the assignments are now being sent online. Assessments, the students need to upload their assignments onto the, and then the lecturers actually assess the projects and send back the marked assignments online. And that has been noted to have reduced a lot of traveling costs, a lot of paperwork. And if you go behind the chain, it also means a reduction in the production of the paper and the whole chain. So that is how ICTs have been used in order to reduce those other alternative costs that have been incurred before. I hope it's been helpful.
Thank you very much, Iris. It has been helpful, and I'm sure was it Washington, registered as Washington, managed to get what they wanted from the response. But then again, just as Pressure has done, I'll just request you if you would post your email address in the chat section so that people can further the discussions beyond this. The last question was addressed to Taswika. So if Taswika could take the floor for another 1.5 minutes, we have about 2 minutes to end this meeting. So Taswika, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. The question was, did we receive any funding for the project? Actually, I want to say the management or the institution was ready, more than ready, to finance the project. But since we had to start from small, what we did actually didn't need any funding because we were using the resources that student teachers use during their lesson. In other words, we integrated what they were doing into actually the what we call the curriculum or the topics that they are doing in the day-to-day curriculum. But otherwise, we are looking at the fact that as we start our bigger project, the institution is ready to finance it. And then it further on us on the whether one can do a change project without finances. I would say it depends on the kind of the project that one is carrying on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Taswika, for the response. And I think the other point that was supposed to be added among the four that Taswika had concluded with was the issue of creativity. So apart from mindset, collaboration, determination, patience, there's also the element of creativity that comes with implementing change projects, because we know how living costs are high, especially in the countries that we come from. And sometimes it just calls for a creative mind, an innovative mind to come up with all these items that will help to enhance our change project. So thank you very much for our presenters for the wonderful presentations given, and thanks to all those that participated. I have seen people have been actively participating in the chat section. Thanks for all the comments. We've come to the end of our meeting, and I think I'll just call upon Preven if he has any closing remarks. Preven.
Thanks so much, Chair. We are handing over to Prof. Taylor to do the concluding remarks for the session. Prof. Taylor.
Thank you, Preven, and thank you, Tiffany, and thank you to our fantastic speakers. What a lineup of fantastic speakers. I think the session that we were putting together today, our alumni session, we had two purposes for it. One was to introduce you to some of our leading alumni and to see the work that they are doing, the reflections that they have on doing this kind of work that we're all doing together. So that was very important, and to see the sort of different ways in which they are approaching those reflections from the level of, the institution and the practical tools that Taswika showed us so beautifully, to the kind of transforming of the institution and its curriculum, as Iris was showing us, and the resource systems in the institutions, to the kind of conceptual framing of how to go about this work so nicely that Zintle showed us, and then the kind of field-based expansions of the work that Prisha showed us. So we wanted to show you that scope, but we also wanted to, and I think Victoria's presentation fitted in so nicely here too, in terms of, how we start to, engage people practically in spite of some of the sort of things that always come up as, difficulties. Remember, I talked yesterday about the discourse of lacks and problems. We tend to do that first rather than saying this is what we can do and this is how we can do things. So the presentations all showed us that as well. And then we also wanted to look at ESD not just belonging to one part of education. So we could see from Taswika's work, just how creative one can be with ESD in early childhood education. We heard from Prisha how important it is to, take ESD seriously in the TVET sector, in higher senior education, primary education, all forms of education. It's really important, including in teacher education itself. So ESD is not something that belongs to one sector of education only. And hence we've also brought, all of you together, because you all come from different parts of the education system, some working in early childhood, some working in TVET, some working on higher education, some working in primary education, some working in secondary education, some working in specific subject areas. But ESD infuses all of those, and there are these very core important principles that we've also seen and we've been hearing about and coming to understand, that you can now begin to see how ESD sits itself into the whole education system. So it's not just for one part of education. So this is what we wanted to share with you today through these beautiful presentations. We've just had Women's Month, and I think that the full platform of women today presenting these fantastic presentations gives us, another chance to celebrate the Women's Month, but also spring. Today is the first day of spring. So we're looking very much forward to the spring. I think all of you are too, being able to go out, see the flowers. The birds are telling us that, things are happening again. We're also looking a little bit to opening our institutions after being so closed with the COVID-19. So let's hope that this day, with these inspirations from these wonderful presenters, will give you a feeling of spring, and that you can infuse your ESD projects with the power of women and the feeling of spring. So thank you, Previn. That's my last words for today. Thank you, Tiffany, as well.
Thank you, Prof.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thanks.
And we'll see everyone tomorrow at 11 for our RSD conference on the SST platform.
Yes.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.